Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this review of LibPAS and reports. I'm Colette Bartow with the Montana State Library, and I am very pleased to turn things over to the State Data Coordinator, Rebekah Kamp, and our guest from Counting Opinions, Lindsay Thompson. So with that, take it away, Rebekah.
Yes, good morning. I'm Rebekah Kamp. I'm your State Library Data Coordinator. And as Colette mentioned on the call, we have Lindsay Thompson, and she is the Director of Customer Service for Counting Opinions. And she'll be doing the bulk of the presentation today about the reporting functionality in LibPAS. But before we do that, I just want to give you a quick update on where we are with the Public Library Survey. As you are aware from my update emails, we do have a dashboard where we document status of the public library survey. And at the start of the season, we set a goal to have a 90% completion. And I'm happy to report we met and surpassed that goal with 97% completed. And this was the first year that we included our tribal college libraries, and we had 6 out of 7 submit. So that's very exciting news. And as we go on into the next year, we'll have even more participation, I suspect, as people know what to collect for the FY 2024 reporting period. And just a little bit of information about some of the work that we did this fall to prepare for the public library survey and to assist you with submitting your data. We had 2 presentations this fall on Zoom and 1 live training event in Great Falls. And throughout the collection period, I responded to 116 emails from you, as well as 30 phone calls and 3 one-on-one Zoom appointments. In addition to those, we had 5 office hours in October and November, which were attended by 17 different libraries. So altogether, that's around 141 hours of time that we spent on the public library survey from the state library side. Of course, we have to add into that your time, and thank you very much for your time spent on submitting the survey. So what happens next? Well, in a couple of weeks here, I'll be headed to the state data coordinator meeting in Colorado. That's a meeting that happens with all the data coordinators around the US, including the territories, and we get together and talk about changes in the survey and best practices. And then following that meeting, it's time to load the data into a portal from the American Institutes for Research. We call them AIR. And once we have loaded that data into AIR, sometimes we get some more edit checks. And so that might look like me getting in contact with you to get some more information to correct any of those edit checks or to provide annotations that maybe were missed in the earlier submission period. And then later in February, we will lock our data, and AIR will go back through that data manually and make sure there's not anything that stands out to them that needs additional explanation. Occasionally there is, and again, then I'll be following up with you probably in March or early April to get more information to supply to AIR. And then we'll be revising, locking, and certifying our data, and it will be accepted by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. After that, we load the data into public-facing dashboards on the Montana State Library website. However, as public library directors and staff, you have access to that data before we make it public-facing on our website. And that's what we're here to talk about today, how to use the reporting functionality in LibPAS. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay to jump in and talk about reports.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebekah. And that is a great status update. That was awesome. Okay, let me get situated here. Oh, sorry. Okay. It's not exactly what I had up, but that's okay. Okay, so here I am at the Montana LibPAS portal, and this is the same portal that you used to enter in your data. So you will come here with the same username and password, and I'm just going to log in as a an example library. When you log in, it will say your particular library name, but all the functionality, the basics are all the same. So I'm just going to use this as my guinea pig today as I go through the tool. And by the way, if you have any questions, I'm not going to be able to monitor the chat, but the team is monitoring the chat and they will interrupt me. Cole or Rebekah will interrupt me if you have any questions, or certainly if you have your microphone as well and you wanted to interrupt, if you want me to go over anything again, please don't hesitate to do that. The other thing I will say here is that I'm very late in getting Rebekah an updated ready report screen. So I just had it finished today. So this may change a little bit. We're happy to have your feedback, and I haven't gotten Rebekah's feedback yet. I haven't been able to give her a chance to review any of this. So this is a page that we can augment. It can be in flux. So again, certainly if you have any feedback, we're happy to hear it. So this is a page that's available after you log in. We could make it on the public side if you want to, but I think for now, I think it's something that's internal. You'll have to log in to access. We have a report with the 2023 data. So if you wanted just a data dump of everything, you could select that report, and then it will come up in a table report. It'll take a little while for this to load on the screen because it's all the data for the entire survey. So it's a rather large report. It also contains any annotations in this particular report as well. So you'll see those listed here. Any notes or annotations are going to be underlined, and there'll be a little asterisk located next to those. And then you'll be able to see the note that the library provided further down on the notes section. The other thing that you'll be able to do on this table report is download the data into Excel. There's this little Excel icon here that you'll be able to click on and you can open. It does currently open in a .xls. It forces open in .xls. So it's going to do this little pop-up that asks you, are you sure you want to open this? And you can just go ahead and say, okay. So that's one little step. Unfortunately, I think maybe in a year or so, we will change that, but right now we do that to keep the integrity and formatting of the data. It's just the best way that we can do that at the time being. So you'll have that extra step when you download it to click OK. Yes, I'm sure I want to open it. And then you'll be able to see all that data in your Excel file. And there's also all the annotations that are listed here, as well as within the tool itself. There's like little embedded comments. So if I enabled editing here, you'd be able to click on those and see those pop-ups as well. In a table report, and this is the default report type that exists, the first report type, and I'll show you a few of the report types. We won't go through all of them today, but you can play around with them. And I can post a guide as well so you can see sort of what's available. But in here, you can sort any of the data in an ascending or descending order just by clicking on the column headers. There are also some graphs that exist down below. We're also going to be updating the graphs soon. We have new updates on dev, but they just haven't gone live soon. But that'll all be seamlessly integrated into the tool. So you can just click on that to see a view of the graph. We've updated it so it's a little bit nicer looking, better colors, and you'll be able to switch things around a little bit in those graphs as well. But that's a future update that's coming out sometime later this year. And some of the graphs are a little different. Some of the questions are yes, no questions, or maybe different. We have a federation question, or what type of geographic codes. You'll be able to look down and see those breakouts as well. I wonder if I can hide this top thing. I don't think so. So I will just go on. It's a little bit in my way, so excuse me as I try and navigate through here. So that's an example of just all the library data. We also have some current year data. Currently, I just have this broken out by federation, but we're also going to have it broken out by library grouping. And here, I'm open to different suggestions in terms of this layout, but we have it grouped by the different groupings in the report. So you can click on staffing, for example, and you'll be able to see, oh shoot, it doesn't say it in the title. Okay, it just says it in the description, so I'll update that. But you'll be able to see it by the different federations, and it would help if those showed here. But this one's Pathfinder, The next one I think is, gosh, I forget the order, but I will update that so those are listed. And again, just to this before our call, so so it'll be a little bit in flux, but you'll be able to see this broken out by federation, all these different groupings, and by population groupings. So you can just look to your population grouping and then view that particular data. So if you just want to focus in on libraries that have the same federation type or libraries that have a similar size population, you can just narrow down and do that by different sections of the survey. There's also the pamphlet that I believe everybody was emailed some pamphlets out when they completed the survey. You can also click here to download that. We have just some basic trend data and comparative data here just as examples, but we can certainly augment this as well. Whatever makes it easier for you when you're creating reports is certainly feedback that we want to receive, because if it's a report that you find useful, we can set it up as a template, and I'm sure your fellow libraries will find it useful as well. The other thing I'll say about the pamphlets, we created just a few examples this year. Certainly, if you have any feedback on these, or if you see examples, maybe it's not even your library, but you have a friend that works at a library, maybe even in another state, and they have this cool pamphlet or information report that they do within their library, and you think that it's using PLS data, then we can certainly replicate that as well, so that we want to make it as easy as possible, basically, for you to gain access to this data, because you do spend a lot of time collecting it. It's a large process. There's a lot of vetting, a lot of man hours go into collecting the data at the library, collecting the data at the state, and the benefit of that is to use the data, is to provide this information to your key stakeholders, to provide it to the local politicians, to get them to buy into the value of the library, because there is a ton of value there. So to be able to be proactive and get these in people's hands is something that we want to make as easy as possible for you, because you've already put in a ton of effort. So this Ready Reports page is a little bit in flux. As I said, we'll be augmenting it shortly, but this is something that is accessible to you. And certainly if you have any feedback, I'm more than happy to hear it and to make some changes to this information. But what I'm going to be focusing on mostly today is the reports and how to build a report from scratch. So I've selected reports, and I'll just go back a step and go to the main page. This reports link should be available on most of the pages that you are, but if you come to the home page, you'll be able to see this. And if you click on reports, it takes you to this sort of blank page, manage reports screen. And in here, you'll have to know how to build a report from scratch. So that's what I'm going to work on today. And certainly, if you don't have a lot of staff or a lot of hours to dedicate to this at the library, that's why we want your feedback on that Ready Reports page, so we can make as much information clickable and easily accessible to you as possible. But for those of you who want to dive in and you have a little bit more time, you want to look at the nitty-gritty of the data, maybe you want to make a case for more staff hours or larger collection, whatever the case may be, and you want to do a deep dive, this is the way to do it. You go to the Manage Reports screen, and
Lindsay?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No,
before we
please.
move on, I just wanted to make a little side note about the population groupings that you had mentioned. And I put this in chat as well, but we're planning to use the same groupings that you see in your public library standards. So that's the less than 3,500, 3,501 to 99,999, 10,000 to 24,999, and then more than 25,000. But I'm hoping as we go through this, you can also show us how they can create their own population peer group based on percentages, because I think that's a really useful thing to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll go over filters quite a bit, because I think that's one of the more robust features of the Manage Report screen. So we'll start with sort of an overview of what you're seeing here. Then I'll go into how to build a report and what you're going to see on that report settings screen that we'll get to in a minute. And then we'll spend a bunch of time on filters, because you can add a filter on any data element within the survey, but certainly population is an important one. You can also add peer group filters if that's helpful, but we'll we'll go over all that, and don't hesitate to interrupt if you have any questions. So here on the Manage Report screen, you're going to have access to a few top level tabs, we'll call them. And the one that's local, that is going to be containing 3 folders by default. And you can add more folders by using this little plus sign here. And the default folders that you'll have is a report folder. This is where any report that you create will automatically end up, unless you just, create it in a particular folder. There are report templates. So these are templates that Rebekah has created that you have access to. So you can click on these, you can save these reports locally, and you can adjust the filters if you want to. So this is sort of an easier starting place as well. So we'll go through that. And then published reports. So in here, you can create any reports that you want. If you decide to publish them, and there's a little button on the report, which I'll show you when we get there, then it will go in this published reports folder. And the benefit of having a published reports folder is the ability to share that report with people who don't have a login to this information. So if you wanted to share this with other staff within the library and you have the main login to the public library survey, you can just publish it and it will create this this URL that is available to them. It's not readily searchable. It's got this long key at the end of it. So it's not like searchable in Google or anything. You won't be able to find it that way, but you can share it with folks. So you can copy this, you can email it to people, you can Skype it, however you communicate, and they will open it up and they'll have full access to the report. So they'll be able to sort the data in an ascending or descending order. Based on any of the column headers, they'll be able to drill down to any of the graphs. They'll be able to download the survey results. And this, again, is just a table report. I'll show you some other report types. But this one is, provides a good overview of just all of the data. But I do like some of the visual reports as well. So we'll look at a few of those. By default, you'll see 10 locations on the screen at a time. You can expand out to see all of them. We just do that so that you can hopefully see the whole report on one screen. Typically if we limit it to 10, you don't have to scroll. Sometimes you do, depending on the data that you get back, but for the most part, it just allows you to see things, but you can certainly expand that out or paginate through. If you decide to delete a report, and I'll show you that as well, then it will just, that URL, if you've shared it, will just say this report has been deleted. You'd have to publish the report again. It would give you a new URL, and you'd have to share that new URL. So if you want to control the data, you can certainly go ahead and delete it. There's also a QR code or just the HTML if you wanted to embed that somewhere. The next tab is the Montana tab. So the trends doesn't have any reports in it, but the pamphlets one does. So these were the pamphlets or the brochures that we sent out when you completed the data. So you can access these, just click on them and it will download your library's data. So you just click on it. These are Word merge files. So just as you see here, I should have actually downloaded another one, but we got the brochure. They're Word merge files. So if you, let's say, don't offer Wi-Fi sessions here, for example, then you can adjust that information. And you'll see that there are some little placeholders within these pamphlets as well, where you can pop in a logo, you can add a quote, or you can adjust this a little bit if you want. So it's words that you can just edit it as you will, and then go ahead and print that off and share it around. So there may be more folders that are shared in here than they are like report templates from Montana. They're just organized a little bit different in here. And then same with PL data if you have access to that. Okay, I'm going to start by creating a report from scratch and we will go from there. So there is a create report button. And if I add a new folder as well, let's just call this, maybe you share this with people within your library. So maybe you want to name it, or maybe you want to give it a category name or a period name. This is your 2023 folder. However you want to do that, that's fine. You can add as many folders in as you like. You can update those folders. You can sequence them. So if you want to reorder them, you can add a description, etc. You can also remove them if they don't contain any reports. But here on this report folder that you have and any LibPAS report folders that you create, you can create a report directly in here. But let's say you're on like a report template tab or a Montana tab. There's no create report button right in here. You can't create something into this particular folder. That's for at the state level to do. So if you're ever in there and you're like, how do I get to the create report option? There is a link in the upper left-hand corner. It says create report right here. So no matter where you are, you can click this link. But if you do happen to be, maybe in your own folder or something, and you click the create report, then it will go into your folder automatically. So I will do that. I'll start there. This takes me to the report settings screen. And, I hope this is not overwhelming. Once you get going with this, it's very easy. It's very quick to create reports, but I know it's tough with a new tool and the learning curve. But in here, the first thing you want to do on the report settings tab is select a collection. So you have access to the public library survey and the outlet collection. You also have access to the IMLS data. That's a little bit older data because it takes a couple years for them to release that, and some electronic measures that we did during the pandemic. So here, once I've selected the public library survey, by default, I'll see the most current period that is locked. So we just locked 2023. So you will have access to that now. And, maybe we should put an asterisk there that it's not fully vetted because it still needs to go through the IMLS process. The other thing that you'll see here is the report name is an unnamed report. Each report needs to have a name, even if it is just unnamed. Like if I try and get rid of this, it's just going to come back with an unnamed report. The reason we need a name is because that's how you click on the report to get back into that report. And I highly suggest you give it a name that makes sense to you, because 9 times out of 10, next year, you're going to want to run these exact same reports, maybe make a few tweaks, but likely you're going to want to run the same reports, and it'll make it a lot easier if you have reports that are well named that you can easily locate when somebody asks you a question. You just log in, you click on your report, you click your results, you don't have to create it again. If you are unorganized, sometimes I'm fast and I'm guilty of having some unnamed reports. It will be no help to you next year. You will be creating the process from scratch because you won't be able to find anything unless you click into 8 different unnamed reports to try and find it. So I do suggest you give your report a name that makes sense. You can add a description as well. And both of these are available on that report or manage report screen, excuse me. So I'll be able to see the name of my report and I'll be able to see the description. And as Rebekah knows, she's created quite a few reports. These folders can get large. You can scroll down through a lot of reports easily. So being able to search for a name, you can also, you won't be able to see it here, but you can also sort any of these column headers by the author, by when the report was last executed, when it was updated, by the name, the type of report. So I do suggest naming these well if you can. The title, this is not as important. This is only used in custom format report types if you want to add a title. Otherwise, all the reports use the report name. So personally, I just select the collection, the period, I name my report. Sometimes I add a description if that augments the report name and the information that I need to access this report, like maybe what filter is added on it. But otherwise, that's all I do. And then I move on to adding data elements to my report or the questions so that I can see some results in my report. So how to do that is as soon as you've selected a data collection from the top, down below, these questions from this particular survey will be available to you. And there's this long scrollable list of questions, and it's in the same order as it is within the survey, in the same group. So if you do respond to the survey, hopefully you'll have a good sense of the order. This is a lot to scroll through. So my preference when creating a report is to use this group select list. and it's going to pull down a listing of all the groups or sections of the survey, if you will. And in here, you can go ahead and click on, let's say, library services. So if I want to look at library services within my library, I can select that group. And then those questions are listed at the top of my little scroll box here. So I can add, maybe I want to just cherry pick a few questions to add in here. And I'm doing this by holding down my control button and clicking on the questions, or your command button if you're an Apple user. And then you can cherry pick these questions and click add to add them to your report. If you want to add a whole slew of questions, you can use the shift key, and that's the same in a PC or a Mac. Add a shift key and select the first question in the range and the last question in the range, and they'll all be highlighted, and then you can add them to your report. And then you'll see them listed here. So this is a good listing of questions here because we have some numeric questions and some select choice or text questions listed. So you'll see now I have a little checkbox located over here on the left. All the questions that you add by default will be selected. This little checkbox will be blue. You can deselect a question, and the reason you might want to do that is to add it as a filter option. And so I'll give you an example. If I go up here into the administrative information and I add this question that it wasn't captured on the survey, but we just sort of have it in the background on federation. And Rebekah may want to place that a little bit differently, but you can select a particular group, maybe South Central, for example. And if I run this report with that question selected, I'm just going to have a column that says, and I have Belgrade is obviously in Broad Valleys. So my library is going to be included here because that's an option that's set. So I'll show you that. But otherwise, it's all going to be libraries in South Central. So rather than having one column that just has the same data repeated, you can remove that particular field. Let me just change it to Broad Valleys. So if I deselect this question now, Federation, then it will still be used as a filter. So it's still, in this case, I changed it to Broad Valleys. It's still going to list just those 21 libraries that are in Broad Valleys, but it's not going to have that column that just has that Federation repeated over and over and over again. So that may be one reason why you want to deselect a question from appearing in your report. But by default, they'll all be selected. So you'll be able to see the questions that you add to your report. Next over here, you'll see there's the name of the question or the survey data element. And you can click on that as well, and it'll give you a little pop-up with the definition if one exists. So you'll be able to see that. If there's a derivation or a calculation, you'll be able to see that as well. So I think library visits per hour, for example, you can see it's calculated by visits divided by the hours that are open. And that's just using a short name. So all those short names are available. And one way to look at all of the information is once you've added at least one data element to your survey, you can click on this link for the public library survey, which is the name of the data collection or survey. You can open this. And I find this is great if you're not that familiar with the survey. Maybe you don't answer the questions for the survey, but you want to try and find something. So if you're searching for Wi-Fi, for example, you can see that it's matching to the outlet Wi-Fi here. And I've got Wi-Fi sessions down here in the, I think it's a library technology section. And you'll see all these short names listed here. You'll see the names of the questions in the survey, and you'll also see the definitions of all those questions that exist. So I find that that can be helpful as well when navigating around the survey, is to click on the data collection or survey name, whatever you want to call it, and that'll pop up some more information about it. And then if you just click on one of the question names, you'll just see the definition for that particular question. Next over here, there is a column, for the value. And this is the value that your library reported for this particular year. So again, when you log in it will be your value that you reported, and in this case for 2023. And if you change the year, those values will be representative of the year or the period that's selected up above here. The reason why we show your library's value is because to try and make it easier for filters. When you're creating or using filters, you'll be able to have a quick reference of what your library reported. And those are the next columns over. We have low value filters, which is, you could also do percentage value filters in this column, so I'll show that. And then a high value filter in this column. Now, this will only be available, this low or percentage or high value filter, for integer or numeric value questions. So here, if I wanted to do a range, let's say, of libraries that have in between 50 and 60,000 library visits. Now, this may be a little bit too narrow. I'm not going to save this. So when I come back, those filters are going to be gone. But if you want that data to stay there, you select save to save your changes. Otherwise, if you run it without saving those text changes and you come back, those will be gone. So in this case, I have narrowed it down, maybe a little bit too narrow. I just have 2 libraries that meet that particular criteria. So you could expand that out a little bit. The other thing that you could do is you could add just a low value filter, just a high value filter, or as I mentioned, you can add a percentage filter. So I can type in any number from 1 to 99 and then add in the percentage sign. And you're going to want to do this over in the low value / percentage filter column. Again, I'm not going to save this. It'll be gone when I come back. Okay, yeah, that's way too narrow. But here I'll do it with, let's say, 25%. So it is going to be plus or minus 25% of my library's value for this particular field. So now I've got a listing of libraries. I've got 4 now that are similar in size to my library's visits for this particular year. So these may be things that you want to use when narrowing the results down. You're not going to be comparable to all the libraries in the state. So looking at all that data in a report is probably too overwhelming. You're probably going to want to look at maybe 10 or 20 or maybe even 5 libraries that are more similar in size to do sort of a deep dive on the data. The other filter that you can add is on any of the text data elements. So if you click on this, and these are probably better done on select choice values like this particular one is, where it has a couple of options like yes, no, or whether it's an annual count or an estimate. And then you can select one or more of those options. Maybe for federation, there are quite a few. Maybe you want to look at a couple of federations in here. So you can, again, just hold down your control or command key if you want to select more than one. I'm not going to save that though, but you can go ahead and run it. And now I'm just looking at the libraries in Broad Valleys and who have an actual count for library visits. And we'll see here there's 15 libraries that match. So you can add as many filters as you like to this particular data, but the more filters you add, the fewer results will be returned. And you may get to a point, as I did earlier, 10% library visits within Broad Valleys that didn't return any other results except my own library. So, so certainly you can add as many filters as you like, but they are and filters. So keep that in mind. They'll have to meet all the criteria of what you're adding in here. Next over is the sequence, and these questions are ordered in the sequence in which they were added. So I added federation last, and it's up at the top just because that's the order of how it appears in the survey. But the sequence, since I added it last, it will appear, I'll just select it. It will appear at the end of the report because it's in the 8th position. You can update these sequences, and I'll just show you this quickly. So if you wanted to change the order of the questions around, you can use a 0 position. You can even use negative value positions, and you can go ahead and run this again. I didn't save it, but now I've got federation. Boom has just switched to the first column now, as opposed to the last column because it was in the 8th position. But I didn't save that change, so I come back here and it's now back in the 8th position. And then there's a remove option. So there's this little red X located next to each of the questions. I can click on this and I can delete this question from my report. So now it will no longer be displayed. I can always add it back though, because I can just scroll up to that section, click on the federation and add it back. But it does allow you to remove questions from the report. Lastly, there are location filters. So it is a lot. I'm sorry to dump all this on you. I feel like filters is the heaviest part of building a report. Because, normally you don't want to look at all the data. Rebekah has to, but, you shouldn't have to. So as you go through here, you can cherry pick libraries that are your peers. Maybe specific libraries that are your peer libraries, or maybe your aspirant libraries, and you can just select those those locations, from the list. So you'll see that. You can even search for locations. So if you want to type in horn, I've got big horn and little big horn, so I can maybe select both of those. These, forgive me, none of these libraries are actually comparable, but it's just to show sort of the process. So here I've gone over to all the peers that I've selected, and I have options. I can just apply this to my report, but if you've gone through the trouble of selecting a list of peer libraries, you'll probably want to save that list. So you can say, my peer libraries or my aspirant libraries. You can save as many of these as you like. You can put a description if you like. And then once you do that, you'll have a list over here on the left of whatever filters you've decided to save here. So in this case, it's my peer libraries, could be aspirant libraries, could be, whatever the case, federation libraries, et cetera. Whatever you want to name them and call them, you can have as many different lists as you like. And you can also adjust those lists. So things may change over time. So you can come in and make some changes. So I'll show you now. I've got just those 6 libraries that I have selected are going to appear in my report now. And any report that I create, I can go ahead and create a new report here, select the period. And as soon as I've added at least one question to my report, then I'll be able to click on any of these saved lists that I have, apply them and see some results. So now I'll be able to see, again, just those 6 libraries. I just added address quickly. So that's typically a way that libraries compare themselves to one another, is that they have a predetermined list. But if you don't, or if you're interested in reviewing what those peer libraries are, maybe some changes in time, then it can be interesting to look at maybe some percentage filters on population or visits or registered users, whatever the case may be, however you want to look at that data, to see some other potential libraries that may be doing some things with similar numbers to your library. Should I go over filters one more time, or are there any questions on the filters before I move on? I can certainly review that again. And you can also remove save filters. So I'll go ahead and remove that, because that was just a sort of random list that I did. But there are no burning questions. I'll move on and show you some options. Then I will show you a few other report types, and we'll still add some filters so that hopefully it reinforces sort of what they are and how to use them. Okay, so what I've showed you so far, we've saved some things, like any text changes here. If you don't save it, as I showed you, and you run your report, you come back, that text change will not be saved. Run will show you the data, so you'll be able to see that. And, oh, sorry, I have a filter on here of just including my own locations. I'll remove that. And then there's a save as new report. I really like this one as well, because you may have gone to the trouble of building like a list of some filters, or even just creating a report, and maybe now you want to see it in a few different ways. I'll just update that again. So this save as new report I find is really helpful, because I look at this data in a table report, and yeah, that's great. I can see the data, I can sort it, etc. But I am a visual person, so maybe you want to change it around and look at it in a graph report, and I'll show you that in a minute. So saving it as a new Yeah.
That $sign in the filter, does that mean my location? Is that what
Yes,
that is? Okay.
that's what that means. Yeah. My location. Yeah. So it's, we do that mostly for the state library so that you can set filters just for my location and it applies to anyone who logs in. So that's why it's a $sign as opposed to like the Belgrade library, because I happen to be logged in as well. So it's just like a standard, whoever logs into your, or whoever uses your template, Rebekah, will be their location. That's why the $sign. The next button over is for publishing reports. So I spoke about that briefly earlier, that you can publish any report that you want, and that will provide a URL that is accessible without the need to log in. So I can just email this to you now, and you can sort the data in ascending, descending order. You can export the data into Excel. You can expand the column headers or expand the rows. You can drill down to any of the graphs. It gives you just like full access to that particular report. So when you're in your report, you click publish, then you'll have to come back here to the manage report screen and the published reports folder to gain access to that particular report. And then actually I'll show you this as well. I mentioned this briefly, but I have this report, I've circulated it. They will live there indefinitely. But if you go ahead and remove it, it will say that the report has been removed with this particular ID. Can't get that back for you. If you republish it, it will have a different URL associated with it, and you'll just have to recirculate that new URL. So that may be more for Rebekah at the State Library, who may post some of these on a website. You're probably less likely to post this data on a website at the library level, but just so you know, you can control access to that if you like, just by deleting it, or otherwise it'll live there and you can circulate it around a little bit more easily rather than telling someone to log in and to go to this particular folder and run this particular report. Okay. I guess I'll start now with the report templates, and then I'll show you some of the report options that I skipped over. There are lots of report templates here that are available. You can click on any of them. Let's go to the technology ones. And you have two options in here when you have a report template. You can run it as is, exactly what Rebekah has created, and you'll be able to see, again, this is going to differ depending on your library. The filters are percentage based, so it'll depend on who you're signed in as, of what kind of data you get back here. But if you wanted to make any changes to this, you can save it as a new report. And what that does is it takes that template and it creates a copy of it in your local report folder. So here you see the report folder. There's a select list here. It'll go in your local report folder. You can move it to a different folder if you want to. And now it's your own report. It's going to have all that same information, but it'll have a dash revised from template and the date that you did that. You can remove that. You can now, if you want to, change the description, change the name, maybe add a new question, maybe change the filter around a little bit. You can also play with the options, which I'll talk about momentarily. You can change the report type. You really have carte blanche now to do whatever you want to this particular report. So she's given you a starting point, and then you can use it how you want and go ahead and run that report. So that's an easier way to get started rather than selecting those data elements and adding them to the report. And we can certainly expand the number of templates that are available here to make it a bit easier for you as well. There's also the Outlook collection. The Outlook collection is a little bit different than the public library survey. We do handle these differently, even though it looks seamless when you're entering in your annual data. They are from separate collections. So in here, if I look at the location filter now, I'm going to see not just the library system or administrative entity, whatever you want to call it. I'm also underneath it going to see outlet, if you will. And a lot of these are just single outlet libraries. So you'll just see one entry down below. It'll sort of look like a duplicate. And then some of them have some branches or some bookmobiles. One thing to note in here, and I'm just going to remove this. Oh, sorry, I haven't saved it as a new report. So let me do that first so I don't mess with your filter. I'm going to save it as a new report. And I am going to, actually, sorry, I wouldn't have been able to save it because I'm logged in as a library, but I'm going to remove that particular filter, and I'll show you here when you run this report at the outlet collection, it's going to look like you're getting a lot of duplicate data because I haven't changed. Actually, this one doesn't. Oh, let's look at run at a table report and see, or maybe you've already changed the option. Yes, okay. On the options tab, we've already excluded libraries, but by default, if you run a report from the outlet collection, it's going to look like you have duplicating data because a lot of these libraries just have a single outlet, and it's going to roll up that central library information into the main library. And then some of these data elements don't roll up per se. So you'll see just the number of responses that are listed there. So that can be a little bit confusing. So the only thing that I suggest if you're looking at outlet level data, you want to dive down to the branches and bookmobiles and central library data of your peer libraries, is you'll probably want to exclude that library level data, that roll up data that appears in a lot of cases when you just have one system to be duplicating data, because you're going to get the outlet and you're going to get the system, just how I sort of showed you in that location list. So on the options tab, if you exclude that, now you're just isolating it down to that that data that's really at the outlet. You're not getting that roll up data. And again, I'll just show you this in the, I think this is the best representation of that, is that without me adding that option of excluding the libraries, as opposed to the outlets, you're getting both of these. You're getting this, I should pick one that I can pronounce. You're getting the Belgrade Community Library, central library data, and then you're also getting the roll up of that central library data at the system or library level. So it appears to be sort of duplicating, particularly if you just have one system. So if you're working at the outlet level, do try to remember to exclude that library level data. And Rebekah has already done it in the templates. So if you just want to look at the templates, that's a great place to start. And now I'll dive into some of these report options. There are many report options. I encourage you to play around with these. There's a lot. By default, the My Location will be selected so that your location is always included in reports. You'll see details is selected, text PIs is selected by default. Item numbers is also something that's selected by default that you may want to remove. You may not care to view that that's item number 13 in the annual report when you're just creating a report. So that may be a common one that you go to the options tab and you remove the item numbers. And now when you run that report, instead of seeing like 1, 2, or 13 or whatever, those will be removed. And I'll show you that in another example here as well in this test example that we did, because we've got all this like 166, 167. So you'll see when I, oh, sorry, let me go back to that. I must have added a weird filter on that. Oh yeah, sorry. Let me remove that. Okay. So I'll save it.
While you're loading that, Lindsay, we had a question, well, 2 questions in the chat. The first one is a comment that sometimes libraries want to compare salaries between peer libraries. So I wanted to talk about that just for a moment, because we did make the decision to suppress salary data from this particular portal, but we are going to be publishing a report separate that summarizes the data using population bands. That way we're providing some anonymity for libraries that had concerns about that data being made public. And so we will have comparative salary data, but not necessarily calling out specific libraries. And then the next question was about the roll-up and what that means. And the commenter said, roll-up, does that mean data from all the branches of a particular library?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it means. Yeah, sorry, I should have explained that. So there's a couple types of roll-ups that happen. So at the outlet level, it's that all those branches and central libraries and stuff roll up to whatever the question roll-up setting is. So for something like weeks per year, the roll-up might just be like the average number of weeks per year that the library was open. If it's something like circulation, then it would be the sum typically of circulation through all those outlets. And that also happens at the public library survey, sort of, with your system data or library data, whatever you want to call it. There's also a roll-up that happens there to give a state total. So that's not something that you'll see so much as a library, but you can, Rebekah will be able to see sort of what the total number of visits reported was by doing that roll up. And so each question has a roll up method that can be set, and Rebekah can adjust those as well. So I'll just show you quickly the item number. So we saw all those item numbers on the report output. So that might be an option that you want to remove so that you don't see those. Depending on the type of report that you're running, and I'm sorry, we're getting to the end, you might want to include percentage change, and that might just be that'll just be for trend reports or things that have more than one period. You might want to include definitions. So I'm clicking percentage change here, but in a table report, that does nothing. But notes, these are the annotations that the libraries provide, that you all provide when you're reporting your data. So if there was an edit check that came up, and those edit checks are provided by MLS, so sometimes they may feel like annoying or a nuisance, particularly if you're a smaller library, because a lot of them are based on percentage. But you can also add them on your own free will. And so that's why we really hope that you don't say like, this is correct, because we want to know more information. Like Rebekah may have to reach out to you if that's the annotation you provide. And for your peer libraries, like they may be looking at this and saying like, oh, this looks like an anomaly. Like, I wonder what was going on with the library here. So those annotations can be included in the reports. Your peer libraries can see them. And that may be something that you want to say. So in this case, there's some great annotations that are provided here. This one's just unknown. I get that happens from time to time, but your library better than people that are outside of your library. So if you can provide as much context to that, folks can include those annotations. The definitions as well, those are the definitions of the data elements. So if you're sending this report to someone who has no familiarity with the survey at all, you may want to include definitions so that they can see, like maybe your library board, you include some definitions so that they can review those. And I can get rid of that yellow background, by the way, if that's unsightly for the annotations. But here you can see the definitions are listed here down below. And I've also included some summary data, total number of respondents per question, average, max, min value, median value reported for these particular questions. And some of them are text-based, so you won't see that summary data listed there. But these options, feel free to play around with them. I've just sort of shown some of the more common ones that you may want to select. And then really quickly, we don't have a ton of time, but hopefully we can do like a more in-depth reporting session at some point as well. But we've got different report types. So there's trend reports, and that will trigger the ability to select a start period. So you can go back as far in time as we have data available for, and you can look at the trends of that particular data. You can include percentage change here. Again, I didn't save that, but percentage change is a couple different types of trend reports as well. But you can go in here and do that. And now, instead of just the years, you'll see that difference column listed there as well. So you'll be able to see the percentage change year over year. There's some different graphs you can drill down to. Again, an Excel export that's available. One of the ones that I really like is the graph report. And you'll see the term PI in here used a lot. That just stands for performance indicator. It's used interchangeably with like data element or question survey question, whatever you want to call it. We use PI because it's quite short for this, but just think of it as like a question-centric type of report. So in here, once I've selected that, now I have a sort option. I can sort the data in an ascending or descending order by clicking on these arrows. I also have the option of adding in an overlay. So let's say for library visits, I want to overlay over top of that, maybe maybe I want to do population, or maybe I want to do registered users. Maybe, there's a number, like programs and program attendance is a good one. So there's a number of different ways to do that. So here it's a lot of data to look at because I didn't add a filter on it. But you can see here on the bar graph, I have library visits, and then overlaid over top of that, which you don't need to do an overlay, but I really like the overlay. I like this visual, is on this green line. So you can compare. So let me just pick on these libraries up here. So I've got Lewis and Clark, Billings, and Imagine If. So here I can see that Lewis and Clark is getting a lot of visits per registered user as compared to some of the other libraries, because their registered users is much lower. It's only like 30,000. It's only around, a little over 30,000. And here Billings is over 50,000, but they have a similar number of library visits. And same here, like these ones are maybe Imagine If and Lewis and Clark. Imagine If has, again, a higher number of registered users, similar, but a higher number than Lewis and Clark, but Lewis and Clark is getting more people into the library more regularly than the other. And you can see that as well. Down here, Bozeman has a higher number of registered users. So again, it's just a visual, like if I look at this at a table report, that might not pop out to me. So again, if you're comparing things like programs and program attendance, you can sort of visually see what you're getting, library collection versus circulation, things like that. So you can play around with all these graphs. There's no harm that you can do in here. You can't impact any of the data or anything. So you can really experiment and stuff. The ones that I really like, table report, that's the default report type. That's great. A PI report is like a type of ranking report. So Rebekah had an example of that here, but it'll show you, in this case, not the best to do with something like visits or these raw data elements that you're coming, because you'll have the biggest libraries on top. But we can also add, there are a few key ratios listed here. We can certainly augment the number of key ratios here. So you can have like library visits per hour we had, or library visits per capita. And then you can see sort of the rankings of how you match up compared to some of the other libraries there. The trend reports I find are great when you're looking at trends, and we've had some wonky years, so that may not be something that's useful in the next little while, but maybe you do still want to look at the trends and how are you coming out of the pandemic, and have they increased to the levels that they were pre-pandemic, etc. And I am a visual person, so I just really love this graph report. Some of the other reports I think are a little bit more intense. I would probably skip the summary graph report. Summary is just what you're going to see when adding that summary data in a trend report, or sorry, in a table report. Just to this options, like this summary data, it's just isolated, so I don't find that super useful. There's summary graph information, it's just that summary data in a graph representation. Period comparison just compares one period to another. This is really great when you're vetting the data. But it could also be useful just to look at your library or some other libraries year over year. It automatically includes percentage change, so that's not something you can toggle on or off. There's a PI gap report. This compares two different questions to each other, as opposed to like two different periods with a period comparison. And then there's a crosstab. Crosstab is really particular to when you want to look at maybe outliers and things or trends over time. It's going to group different questions together, and custom format is looks pretty plain when you set it up, but there's a lot of, you can have trends in custom format, etc. The beauty of the custom format report is that it gives you this URL at the bottom that you can embed into an Excel document or a Word document, and it will automatically fetch that data. So if something changes, maybe you just change the period to 2024 and you have an Excel file that pulls in all these different reports, maybe it's just some tables or something, you can auto refresh all of that data for the next year and just like comment around it. But those are ones that we'll leave to another day when we do more of a deep dive. Again, I'd probably focus on, you know, your top few reports here, the top 4 and maybe the trend report when you're working with the data. And I've come to the hour and I'm so sorry, there's more I want to share, but I will post some documentation here. Please don't hesitate. This is your tool, so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any feedback, if you want us to add more things, if you have suggestions, etc. If you want some more key ratios, just please don't be shy. And I'm happy to stay on the call longer if there are any questions or anything that anyone wants me to show.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And I just want to draw your attention to the chat participants because Coley posted a link to a survey. We try to evaluate all the presentations we do. And I also wanted to mention that we are going to be adding the public library survey to the knowledge base as well. So that'll be an opportunity for us to create some articles and handouts, things you can print, as well as maybe some short recorded tutorials on each of these different report types. I noted in the poll that we still have some developing confidence in using that system, which is understandable because it's brand new to all of us. But I hope you can make use of those resources, and I'll work with Lindsay to try to create some more training opportunities for you regarding the report system. And as you're filling out your evaluation, if you have any suggestions regarding reports that you would like to see added as templates, please add that in the comments so that I can start building some of those reports for you.
Thank you so much, everyone. The recording will be posted a little bit later today. And as always, we really appreciate your feedback. And please do reach out to Rebekah with any questions that you might have.